The Denver Nuggets lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves in 7. What happened? How did we get here? What are some of the things that have to be addressed this summer if the Denver Nuggets are going to put themselves back in position to get back to the top of the Western Conference? And when they do get into an NBA playoff setting, that they're able to pull through to get another championship. We're going to talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome into Locked On Nugget. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Shout out to y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here. This is our first postseason episode here on Locked On Nuggets after Matt Moore, Adam Mares got a chance to talk to you a little bit after Game 7. I'm going to share my thoughts about Game 7 and what happened and really kind of what went wrong over the course of the series. But, y'all, before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Y'all, let's talk about some hoops, y'all. The Denver Nuggets lose 98-90 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, y'all. And to say I was surprised would be an understatement. To say that I was surprised that they lost that game would be an understatement. Yo, the Denver Nuggets looked like they were primed to be able to win. They were up 3-2, and just like 2019, when the Denver Nuggets went up 3-2 versus the Portland Trail Blazers, the Nuggets weren't able to close the series out. They go to Minnesota, lose by 45 points. They come back to Denver, 20-point lead in Game 7, and they lose again. That is one of the most striking things about this team. This team all year performed at such a high level. They looked like a team that was primed to repeat, looked like a team that was primed to take care of business. And what I just love about this team is that they were so resilient. All year, they were so resilient. But then in this case, the Nuggets come back from an 0-2 deficit. They get up 3-2. Game 6 is understandable, not losing by 45 points. That is not understandable. But they end up getting into this situation in Game 7 where they're up 20 points at the end of the third quarter, and they're just not able to muster the energy, the fight, and just the play to be able to take advantage of the fact that they were at home in the Game 7 and they still end up losing. And what's so frustrating about it is the Nuggets were in prime position. The Nuggets were in prime position to do things the way they thought they would. Like, their offense was cooking. Their defense was locking up. They were doubling Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was 6 of 24 this last game. Did not play well offensively. No sugarcoating it, no way to get around it. 22 years old, obviously has a lot more Game 7s to play in. But the Nuggets lose their first Game 7 in 5 years, and they do it on their home court because their offense absolutely falls apart. There is a period, y'all, in this game where the Denver Nuggets basically gave up a 15-0 run to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the third quarter. And before you knew it, the game was basically over. They were leading by 1 after leading by 15, leading by 20, and then they were leading by 1. The Nuggets just cratered. And it really just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And if you look in the second half of this game, listen to this, y'all. In the second half of that game, Michael Porter Jr., who we're going to talk about a little bit, 3 points, minus 18. Aaron Gordon in the second half, 0 points, minus 23. KCP, 0 points, minus 14. Christian Brown, 2 points, minus 11. So literally, the second half scoring of the Denver Nuggets was 37 points, 3 of which came from Porter, 2 of which came from Brown, 11 from Jamal Murray, and 21 from Nikola Jokic. This was an abysmal performance. They got outscored 60 to 23 in the 60-37 in the second half. They got outscored by 23 points. Yo, that third quarter looked like something out of a horror story. Discombobulated offense. They were getting ripped at the point of attack. They were missing all of their threes, wide open or contested. Jokic, Cat was guarding him. Cat was bodying. And then Jokic, when he got an opportunity to get over the shot, he just didn't have enough gas, it felt like, in that third quarter. Now, he had 15 points in the fourth quarter. 15 points in the fourth quarter. So he played really well for the most part. And then he made 2 threes in the fourth quarter as well. But Jokic in that game, one of the things the Timberwolves did, they made him take a lot of threes. He took 8 3-pointers in the second half, 8 of them. He took 8 3-pointers in the second half. He was 7 of 16, 44% from the field. Jamal Murray, 42% from the field, 5 of 12. And then Michael Porter, 1 of 5. The offense fell apart. And, you know, Michael Malone has taken a lot of different kind of flack for his decision-making. Michael Malone decides in this game he only wants to rest Joker for about a minute and a half. And again, you know, given the context of the game, I understood why he finished down the stretch of that fourth quarter. He came back in. But, you know, some of this is the last 2 games, they had changed his rotations up. Malone kind of got a little bit desperate. In game 6, they did the same thing. Jokic started the second quarter. And then Jokic started the second quarter in game 7. And they have not done that all year. And they haven't done that since the NBA Finals. So Malone kind of went all out with Joker's minutes. And he just did not have the energy that you expect the 3-time MVP to have, it looks like. And again, it's understandable. Like, you know, he definitely got gassed. The Nuggets were not doing anything outside of him at all. And then they're asking him to shoulder the offensive load. And on the other end, they're getting beat up at the point, closeouts and Naz Reid. I think Jamal Murray gets driven by. Nobody was rebounding. Joker got it was just a lot of different things. And I think in this game, the Nuggets lost confidence in a way that I just haven't seen them do. Not this era, not this edition since they got KCP. They literally got to a point in the game where everybody that wasn't Joker looked like they were just kind of tightening up. And Joker and Jamal. And even Jamal was passing the ball to Joker and nobody wanted the shot. There was just no movement. People were standing around. They were just basically looking at Joker saying, please save us. Now, Joker, again, to his credit, had 21 points, had 15 in the fourth, so he tried. But they need more people to come to the party than that. That just wasn't going to be good enough. And then in the fourth quarter, Joker has 14 points. Michael Porter has 3. Jamal Murray has 6 points. But Minnesota, by that point, 7 points from McDaniels, 2 points from Towns, 8 points from Gobert, 3 points from Edwards, 4 points from Mike Conley, 8 points from Naz Reid. They got 32 points. 32 points in that quarter, 47% from the field, and they were 12 of 15 from the free throw line. 12 of 15 from the free throw line inside of one quarter. The Nuggets got in foul trouble early because Rudy Gobert got 3 straight defensive fouls on mismatches, and he hit his free throws. That was the difference. Rudy Gobert 4 of 5 from the free throw line. Jaden McDaniels 5 of 6 from the free throw line. That simple. They hit their free throws. That ultimately won them the game. The Nuggets in that quarter got 2 free throws. They were 2 of 2. Minnesota was 12 of 15. Minnesota's just a more aggressive team, and there's really no making excuses for it, man. Like, you know, I do think, like, Joker, you know, over the course of the game, 34, 19, and 7. Like, those are great numbers. 34, 19, and 7. He was the only player outside of Jamal that showed up. The Nuggets had 2 players that scored more than 10 points, more than 7 points in this game. Jamal Murray had 35 points, was just absolutely cooking in the first half. 5 of 5 from the free throw line, 13 of 27 from the field, 4 of 12 from 3. But in the first half, the Nuggets were doing everything and anything they could ask for. Nikola Jokic, that's that quarter. In the first half, 13 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. Jamal Murray, 24 points. And he was 8 of 15 from the field and 3 of 5 from 3. And then everything just kind of broke off from there. Everything broke off from there. And the offense fell apart. Everything. They were just so disconnected. The confidence was sapped out of them. And it's really difficult right now because the Wolves were the better team because they won the series. But, y'all, we're a Nuggets collapse away in the third quarter from being in another Western Conference Finals. And that's the difference. Now, they definitely got gassed at the end of the game. They just didn't have enough left. You know, some of that is the fact they just didn't have any rotation players that they could put in the lineup, which we're going to talk about in segment 2. with an article that came out from Kevin O'Connor. But again, Kyle Anderson, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they're playing playable guys off their bench. The Nuggets are playing Justin Holiday, Christian Brown, and Reggie Jackson. And those three players combined for exactly 3 points. Exactly 3 points. Exactly 3 points. So, at least in the first half. Over the course of the game, Naz Reid gets 11 points, and he was just so huge on the defensive end. And Christian Brown, Justin Holiday, and Reggie Jackson had 5 points between the two of them. Again, a lot of this is Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown's here. Maybe it's not the same situation. So Bruce not being here definitely, and again, it's not the Nuggets' fault. They literally physically, they could not pay him. The NBA would not allow them to pay more than $7.7 million. And he needed to go make a generational money, which he did, $22 million a year. But the Nuggets just needed more from their bench. They needed more from their starters. The starters got outworked, and that just can't happen. And the starters have been outworked too much in this playoff. So let's talk about the article on the other side, because there's some really important things in there that we need to tap into that I think are going to be really important for the Denver Nuggets and where they're headed here in the future. We'll talk about all that and more here in segment 2 of Locked On Nuggets. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll be right back here for more on Locked On Nuggets. What's going on, y'all? We are back here for segment 2 of Locked On Nuggets. We are talking about the Denver Nuggets falling apart in Game 7 at home. Game 7 at home versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it was just an ugly, ugly loss. So, y'all, let's talk about the Kevin O'Connor article. So, very recently, as of today, May 21st, 2024, Kevin O'Connor drops an article basically detailing some of the information surrounding Calvin Booth's decision-making, surrounding the fact that Michael Malone and Calvin Booth might have differing opinions on the roster and it this year. I'm going to share some of this just because I think this is important for us to tap into, but it's interesting nonetheless. And one of the reasons it's interesting is because Calvin Booth last year during media day when I was there, he did talk about this idea that they wanted to be able to win multiple championships over multiple years. Didn't necessarily have to be back and back, but they wanted to win enough where they could win championships over multiple seasons. And if you look at some of the details of this article, it just shows that there was just a little bit of a difference in communication and expectation. Calvin Booth, this is from Kevin O'Connor. The back-to-back championship dream is over for the Denver Nuggets players and fans and coaches, but for the general manager, going back-to-back was never the biggest priority. I just want dudes we try to develop, and it's sustainable. Nuggets GM Calvin Booth told me last August. If it costs us a chance to win a championship this year, so be it. It's worth the investment. It's more about winning 3 of 6, 3 out of 7, 4 out of 8 than it is about trying to go back-to-back. Now that, y'all, is very interesting. Very interesting. Now, we knew that because we heard that during media day, but that showed up in such a big, profound way this year because the Nuggets had nobody that they could go to, off the bench consistently that was able to give them a strong punch. And that especially played itself out in the playoffs. Now, Christian Brown, I think he showed a lot of effort. He showed a lot of fight. He definitely battled defensively. He looked really good versus Anthony Edwards. So Christian Brown has some really, really, really strong moments. But overall, they just did not have enough, namely from their starters. And I think some of this due is to fatigue. Aaron Gordon talked about this in the post-game press conference. He just straight up said, look, it was a grind. It was a battle this year. We were just exhausted. Coming off the championship last year, going into this year, being hunted every single game. Every game they were hunted. And then having to battle for the number 2 seed or number 1 seed the rest of the season, they just said we were just exhausted. And y'all, this is where you need to have players you can play. The Minnesota Timberwolves. Kyle Anderson wasn't good in this series. But having Kyle, having Nas, Monte off the bench, Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the bench, that's important. And if you heard me at all on any of the platforms last year, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if I'm the Nuggets, I'm trading a couple assets for him because he's worth it. He's a 6'5" combo guard. He can play next to Jamal Murray. You can start him if you need to, and he's a better player overall than Reggie Jackson is. And Reggie was really good at points in this series, so it wasn't even like it was his fault. It was the starters. Michael Porter Jr., who had a great series versus the LA Lakers, was horrific in this series. Now, again, to his credit, there are a lot of things that were happening in his life, so I don't want to not acknowledge that because that's a part of it. Basketball is not played in a vacuum. It's not played in a vacuum. So they definitely have things that are affecting him off the court, but he was just not good. 10.7 points, 5.7 rebounds, 1 block. And he shot 37% from the field and 32% from 3 and 77% from the line. That's not good enough, Mike. But Mike knows that's not good enough. Mike knows that is not good enough. Mike had 2 good games in the series, 20-6 and then 21-4. And it made a huge difference in the series. And Mike just had to be better. He had to be. But so did Jamal Murray. Again, Jamal Murray, y'all, as many of y'all remember, Jamal Murray missed 23 games in this regular season. And in those 23 games, the Nuggets struggled. They struggled because obviously they're missing their second best player. Absolutely. But again, not having a player that you can bring off the bench that is a competent NBA starter or even near starting level problem. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is making $4.5 million a year. Like, it's not that he's too expensive. Jamal Murray, 18.4 points, 4.4 assists, 4.1 rebounds in the last 7 games. In the 7-game series versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, he averaged 18, 4, and 4. Now, a lot of that had to do with its injury. I also want to acknowledge that. A lot of it had to do with the Minnesota Timberwolves defense. It was 50-50. But Jamal, if he plays a decent series, maybe if he's not as fatigued, whatever else it might have been, he's not averaging 18, 4, and 4. Last year averaged 26, 7, and 5, I think, versus the Wolves. So he's already done it. He had already had those moments before. And so this series was so disappointing because you didn't get anything from your second and third best player. Like 11 points and 18 points from Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. isn't good enough. It's not. And they know it's not. And you can't have Jokic, who is obviously going to be the one to have to carry most of the weight because he's the 3-time MVP. Jokic in the series, 29, 11, and 8. 29, 11, and 8, and shot 52% from the field, 23% from 3. Jumper disappeared, and then 89% from the free throw line on 6 attempts a game. So, Joker could have been better at the 3-point shooter for sure. That would have helped him a lot. But ultimately, y'all, like, the Nuggets just did not have enough. And you could just tell they were just looking. So Calvin Booth's comments there are very interesting because he wants to try to develop guys. But the problem is that was there real development from Peyton Watson, from Jalen Pickett, from Hunter Tyson, from Zeke Naji, 4-year, $83 to $32 million deal? Christian Brown. Was there enough development there that you can competently say going into next year, we can roll with these saying young dudes and we're bona fide, we're going to be a better team? So, and me and a few other people have talked about this before, but Kevin O'Connor mentions that only one bench player logged more than 10 minutes in the Timberwolves series, and 5 players the age of 25 under the age of 25 ride the pine in either game, in the entire game. And he said this was the theme all season, not just in the playoffs. On multiple occasions throughout his campaign, Michael Malone, the fiery head coach of the Denver Nuggets, lamented his team's lack of steady depth. I'm going to show you this quote from Malone because it's important. I'm going to show you this quote from Malone because it's important. And this is what he had to say about the matter. Malone says that's the challenge when you have so many young, unproven players off the bench. Malone said in a late November after early season loss to the Rockets. But we also have games to win. And that delicate balance, it's a tightrope, but we need to win. And I'm going to play the guys who are going to help us get a win. Kevin O'Connor said Booth and Malone had different approaches to the season that often clashed. Booth was investing in the future, and Malone was thinking entirely about the present. And in the end, nobody won. The Nuggets failed to advance to the conference finals, and the rookies didn't get developmental time they needed. Booth's plan could still work out in the long run if his draft picks improve, but with the Nuggets already planning their summer vacation, it looks like he whiffed on a valuable chance to win it all again. And I do think, man, again, the Nuggets were right there. The Nuggets were right there. They had an opportunity and they just did not have the gas, did not have the juice. So we're going to talk a little bit about this more on the other side too, and especially when it comes to Porter, Jamal. Again, definitely reasons as to why, but the series overall, things just did not look good for the Denver Nuggets as a whole. But y'all, we're going to talk about all that and more here on Locked On Nuggets. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, PrizePicks will have your back and not count that as a loss. So y'all, make sure download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Yo, I'm telling y'all, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. PrizePicks. Yo, we'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, we are back here at Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper, your team every day. Y'all, we will be here all summer. We will be here all summer. I'm telling y'all, look, I feel you. I feel everybody. How long is this loss going to sting? Probably for a while. You know, this has been a unique experience for myself. I think I have really accepted the fact that the Nuggets were struggling a whole lot with that Wolves team, that they could have and should have won. Again, you're up 20 at home with Game 7 on the line. But they just cratered, and they cratered in a way that you don't expect a team like that to crater. So really unfortunate, obviously, but the Wolves earned that victory and the Nuggets earned that loss. That's as simple as it gets sometimes. And that's why the NBA is the NBA. That's why it's one of the best sports in the world. So I just think that right now we're in a situation, man, where the Nuggets are going to have to make some really interesting decisions because as we saw inside of that article from Kevin O'Connor, there are some philosophical differences between Malone and between Calvin Booth. And Jokic's comments on this is actually really important here. I'm going to share this one last quote from Kevin O'Connor's article. Jokic says, I think they're built to beat us. Jokic said after Game 7, just look at their roster. They have basically 2 all-stars. They have 2 probably first-team defensive players. Mike Conley, who's the most underrated player in the NBA. From the bench, they have a 6th man of the year. They have Kyle Anderson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was really good for them. They are one team that can literally do everything. They can be big or small. Kevin O'Connor said Jokic's comments had to sting for Booth and the Nuggets, especially when considering that ex-Nuggets GM Tim Connolly is the one who drafted Jokic, built the roster around him, and then left for the Timberwolves to construct the title hopeful shape to defeat his own creation. Maybe the Nuggets had to lose this season for Booth and Malone to get on the same track long term, but all season Denver lacked organizational alignment, a worrisome reality for a franchise that just won its first title with a historic player who's still in his prime and who this season won his 3rd MVP in 4 years, y'all. And that right there is it. Can't speak to how much the infighting caused some separation at all, or if the infighting ever got like gregarious or egregious. I can't say anything like that, but what I can say, it didn't work Because if the Nuggets, you can't be two things at once. And that's really, and I will say this, it's not that you maybe can. It's really hard to be two things at once. It's really hard to develop talent for the future, stash talent for the future. And then on the other side of that, be trying to win championships when you got players in their prime at age 28 season, age 26 season, age 25 season, age 27 season, or 28 season. Like Jokic and Gordon, both 29 this year. Murray, 27 this year. Porter will be 26 in June. It's not as if they have a lot of runway left. They're in their prime, but like Jokic is 30 next year. So is Gordon. So what do we do now about this? Like, where do we go from here when you do have young players on the roster who couldn't see any time in the playoff for the most part, except for Christian Brown? Peyton Watson hasn't developed his jump shot yet, hadn't developed transition yet, hadn't developed his playmaking yet. He's still growing and learning. Hunter Tyson, no real time this year. Jalen Pickett, no real time this year. Julian Strother, not a lot of time this year. So what is the process? Like, what is the goal? Because if you're going to have this many young players in the roster, like, why is Colin a two-way player playing over Jalen Pickett? For what? And on the other end, if you're going to play Colin, then why would you draft a smaller point guard as well? Like, what's the point? So a lot of this is that the Nuggets are going to have to get in on one accord. When we are in the regular season, this is what we are targeting. This is what we're doing. So that by the time we get to the playoff, we have players that are ready to go and as fresh as possible. But they just were not able to do that. And I think that Jokic's comments are really interesting. And again, a lot of talk about Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. Y'all, he was great this year. 81 games played, 17 points a game, 22 in the first round. Really good rebounder, really good three-point shooter. He had a bad series. He had a really bad series. He had maybe his worst series. Maybe his worst versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. But again, once they put Anthony Edwards on to Jamal Murray and Ant couldn't beat him off the dribble like he normally would, then at that point, Jaden McDaniels is basically shadowing Michael Porter Jr., and there's just not a lot of moves to be made. But at the end of the day, I do think Porter obviously is one of the more valuable players in the league. The problem it's just going to be is convincing the Nuggets that there's something that they could do better than Porter. And I don't think they think that as of right now, unless you're telling me you're getting like a superstar or star at that level. So, again, it's just really, really frustrating, y'all. Again, I keep going back to third quarter, up 20 points. What are we doing? What are we doing? Executing offense is not there. It's not there. Defensive presence is not there. Like, the communication is not there. They just look like a team that hadn't been there before. And everybody except for one person, maybe two, they just folded inward and stared at Joker and basically said, Joker, please save us. And Joker tried. But the momentum had already been set out and the damage had already been done. So really, 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 really unfortunate for the Denver Nuggets, man. But I think they're going to have to make some big decisions. They're going to have to get some veterans off the bench. KCP has a player option next year for $15 million. He's probably going to be in a situation to get 18 to 20 from the Nuggets, or maybe somebody else with 18 to 20. I would be guessing what his contract is going to be. And then on top of that, Reggie Jackson got a player option. Zeke Najee's contract starts next year. So they got some movable deals. But the problem is like, you can't trade KCP unless you're getting a clear upgrade, like a clear upgrade. And then on the other end of this, like, what exactly is Reggie Jackson and Zeke Najee going to net you unless you attach, your first round picks to them? What is the outcome? So I just think a lot of this is there are some veterans to be had, some championship pieces to be added to this team. And that is a mix of a lot of different things. And it's really frustrating, I think, for Nuggets fans because they just felt so hopeful about this season, but yet got so close. Game 7, up 20 with the best player on the court, 34, 19, and 7, and then the best player for the Minnesota Timberwolves 6 of 24. It was all there. And then the role players just kind of took over everything. So really unfortunate, y'all, but we will be back again soon this week to talk about more pertaining to this offseason, because there's some things we got to get into concerning the Denver Nuggets. Y'all know what time it is. See y'all on the other side.